One thing is for certain. If our lives had depended on how well we had practiced this play, then we would have been very, very dead. In fact, the morning practice had been a complete mess. Mr. Legonk had changed the play again, so that we could use all of Gamble's new special effects. Quite a lot of these changes involved me. I was now an evil, hairy-boiled sweet with red glowing eyes carrying a deadly mince pie. Before the raisins went through the portal on the flying mince pie, and no matter how many times I write this, I still don't quite understand what that means, the Raisin King had to shoot me repeatedly with a gun, then chop off my leg. None of it made sense, nor did it seem to move the story along. In fact, it was totally bonkers. However, Mr. Legonk seemed quite keen on me being badly injured. Yes, that's it, really slice him with that saw, he gleefully yelled at Kevin Barth Vader Harrison. And if he actually bleeds, then the audience will believe it more. Kevin didn't look so happy about this. Oh, I feel a bit rough. Excellent, cried Mr. Legonk. Use it, boy, use it. If you need to puke on him, just do it. It'll make the whole thing more real. I'd rather you didn't, I said. Strangely enough, for once, Mr. Legonk didn't seem to think that the practice had been a mess. That afternoon, before we went through to the dress rehearsal, he seemed quite full of energy and excitement. We were all wearing our costumes for the play. I was back in my nappy from the freak show. I didn't think this made me look more like a hairy boiled sweet. I just think Mr. Legonk wanted to make me miserable. Other people were wearing whatever they'd dug out of the costumes that Gamble's uncle had stolen. It didn't seem to matter what their characters were. The Raisin King was now dressed as a giant fish. The lump of reindeer meat was now dressed as a ballerina. Mr. Legonk thought that all of this was great. He seemed to think that the play would be better if the audience was totally confused about what was going on. Only Vanya wasn't wearing a costume. Out of principle, she'd refused to wear the stolen stuff, so she was in her school uniform. We have worked hard, Mr. Legonk boomed. We have had problems. People have tried to ruin our play. Once again, he looked at me at this point. But now we have the chance to show the world something that will blow their minds. Are we ready? Most of the class cheered. Mr. Legonk's voice had a way of building up people's excitement. Special effects technician, are you ready? Gamble burped. Then let us show this school what a real play looks like. He swept to the door with everyone lining up noisily behind him. The point of a dress rehearsal is for everybody to practice in front of an audience for the first time. We had the parents coming to watch the next day, so our audience was all the pupils and staff from the school. The hall was a weird sight because all of the children were sitting in rows wearing their costumes for the production. The foundation stage children were at the front in their shiny wise men capes and homemade crowns. The year ones were struggling to sit down in their Christmas pudding costumes. Then there were other rows of angels and Christmas trees and Santas. Each class took it in turns to perform their little song or dance. My class were going last of all. As each of the other groups got up, I felt more and more nervous. It was like someone was blowing up a balloon inside my belly, which was getting bigger and bigger all the time. There were two reasons for this. Firstly, like I said before, I hate being on stage. I don't like people staring at me at all. But more importantly, the more I watched, the more I realised that all of the other classes were miles better than we were. For a start, their parts of the show lasted for only a couple of minutes each, instead of about 10 years like ours did. The little kids looked seriously cute. The older ones had interesting, clever routines. There were funny jokes, lovely songs, and well-planned dances. Everyone was smiling and happy and knew what they were doing. Mr. Ligonk wasn't impressed with the other classes though. Occasionally he would yawn dramatically, or tut, or say something under his breath like, "Oh, how embarrassing," or "Oh, who planned this?" And then it was our turn. As the wild applause for the Year 5 group, who did a really funny rap and dance-off dressed as reindeer, died down, Mr. Noblet, the head teacher, stood at the front. "Well, guys," he said to the school, "we've got one last super great class left." And he was interrupted by Mr. Ligonk bursting onto the stage, bowing and waving, even though nobody was clapping him. "Thank you so much," he boomed. "You're so kind." The rest of the school just stared at him in confusion. We all enjoyed those basic and cute performances, he said, making basic and cute sound like two words you might use to describe a rash on your bottom. But for now, something spectacular. I warn you, this play is so powerful that some of you might literally lose your minds. A few children tittered, but Mr. Ligonk growled at them. "I do not joke. Many audiences have become drooling vegetables after watching me act." For once, I believed him. He clasped his hands over his heart. "I only ask that none of you become jealous or sad about how your performances might look when compared to our one. It is best not to compare. I am, of course, a professional actor." Mr. Noblet coughed and pointed to his watch. "Humph," said Mr. Ligonk. "Prepare to be astounded by Inside the Mince Pie by me, Bartholomew J. Ligonk, performed for the first time by my class, Year 6. The lights went down. From off stage, a voice came over the loudspeaker. "Imagine a world of pastry, of mincemeat, of death." And then the play began.